What's the worst reason that you hooked up with someone? Story 1. Late to the game, but had a friend in college who shared a resemblance to me. We'd go to parties and introduce ourselves as brother and sister the whole night. Really play the part. Then, we'd end each night making out furiously in front of everyone. Oh geez. My now husband and I used to do this too. These days, we joke that we're not related, and the other responds, "We have the same last name." When my wife and I first got together in our teens, people used to think we were brother and sister quite often. We decided to play on this by going to a fancy dress party as the White Stripes. Unfortunately, nobody there had heard of them, so we just looked like an oddly dressed incest couple. Story 2. My first long-term girlfriend cheated on me when she went off to college. We broke up. About 2 months later, she got hit by a transportation bus and lost her leg. We had seen each other a couple of times after her recovery and hooked up again. Years later, I met another girl with the same first name through a different ex, and she had also lost her leg too. I was thinking, what are the odds of someone else being able to say they slept with two girls with the same name, both missing a leg? So, I did the deed. Story 3. She told me her therapist told her to have sex with me, so I obliged. Who am I to argue with a professional? Edit. Here's the whole story. I met this woman on Tinder, and we hit it off pretty quickly. Got a date set up, and it went well, but I just didn't feel that spark. Tried 2 or 3 more dates, and it just never clicked, unfortunately. I told her as such, and offered her to be friends, because I did enjoy her company, and she said it was cool with her. So we were friends for a bit, maybe 2 weeks. Then one day, we happened to be at the same bar and ran into each other. Apparently, she wasn't 100% okay with just being friends, and was really interested in me to the point of telling her therapist as such. She was already seeing one. I wasn't the reason she was seeing one. She explained her feelings, and I, as politely as I could, explained that I just didn't have the same feelings. She got upset, but said she understood, but she walked away crying. About a week or so goes by, and we happen to run into each other again at the same bar. I was outside smoking and very, very drunk. It was nearly closing time, so I was just about to leave. She comes up to me and makes small talk for a minute until she just blurts out, "My therapist says I should have sex with you." In my drunken state, I remember saying back, "Well, I can't argue with that." I had a cab called a few minutes before, and they showed up not long after. We got in the cab and got back to my place, where we got busy. So we're getting hot and heavy, and I'm still considerably drunk. She isn't. She just hung out at the bar with her friends, but didn't really drink. It was actually a ton of fun, and we were both really enjoying ourselves. Now for the best bit. I have a position I've always really enjoyed where I'm standing up, and I pick my partner up and go at it that way. I don't know why I like it, but I do. Anyways, keep in mind, I'm quite drunk still, but I picked her up and started at it. Well, a little side note is that I'm about 5'10" and 190 pounds, and I do manual labor for a living, so I'm quite strong. This woman was actually a little taller than me. I think she was about 6'1", and she weighed probably around 240 pounds. I typically would date women that were considerably shorter and that weighed less. Just my type, I guess. Not calling that woman in this story fat either. She wasn't. So going at it for about 30 seconds while I'm standing up and carrying her, basically. Since I was so drunk, I didn't realize that I couldn't actually support her very well, and that I was slowly letting her fall. Then my strength gave out, and wouldn't you know, I dropped this poor woman right onto the corner of my entertainment center and into the floor. I freaked out and thought that I had killed her or something. She's rolling on the floor, going between laughing and shouting in pain. There was a giant scratch all the way up her back from her booty to her shoulder, and it was already bruising. She played it off like it was okay, and said that she still wanted to finish. So hey, I wasn't going to argue. She seemed okay. We ended up finishing the fun a little while later, and she stayed the night. She left the next morning, and I never heard from her again after that. She never messaged me, and once I remembered what happened, I was too embarrassed to reach out at all. Story 4. We both had the same name, and thought it would be fun to call out our names in the middle of the heat of it. Okay, this is like the best reason to hook up with someone. That sounds hilarious. Honestly, that sounds so fun. Too bad I'll probably never meet anyone with my name, since it's not technically a real name, and I've never heard of another person being called that. My middle name is Ashley, though, and I tend to go by that in professional settings. I'm a guy, by the way, so I probably have a decent chance for trying that. Story 5. My best friend. I'm a male, she's a female. Hadn't had sex in a year and asked me. We stopped being friends in any capacity after that. I had a very similar experience. She was divorced after her marriage failed within a year. The guy was a total piece of shit. We had been very close friends for almost 15 years at that time, though it somehow never really worked out. Hardly any gap where we both were single. Anyways, we met up loads after her recent divorce. She started being rather upfront about wanting to see me, which was somewhat out of character for her being so adamant towards me. Started hinting at it at some point, but being a man means I only really got those hints in retrospect. Then I met a woman online, a very nice one, and had a first date with her. My best friend wanted to meet up again, so we did. We went for breakfast. She was on about how her ex husband neglected her needs most of the time, followed by telling me how good she thinks I looked and how we should just get it over with. So I decided to go for it. Since I'd only been on one date with this woman, I'd always felt my friend was very attractive, so let's go. We went to my place, drank tea for a bit. She repeatedly told me not to get feelings, which I had in the past. Then got it on, and it was amazing. She thanked me afterwards. I asked if we were going to make this a regular thing, and she said it all depended on me and how I would act on future dates with the woman that I met. Then she left my house. After, I kind of processed what happened, and I went to my best friend, who happened to be gay, and he said it was about time if we got it out of the way, followed by if I was going to have sex with any of my other friends now, too. Spoilers, I didn't. I decided to plan a second date with the woman I met. I didn't develop feelings for my close friend afterwards. She had some issues she needed to work out, which I needed to do in the past and have, with her support as well. I met up with my close friend a few times after. It wasn't awkward, but she kept dropping huge hints, like how she could never have done a one night stand. Feelings had to be involved. I still didn't realize she meant that she had developed feelings for me, because men need the subtlety of a sledgehammer when it comes to this. I kind of laughed it off, thinking we had a solid enough friendship to do such a thing. Besides, I was still dating that woman that I had met. Quite soon after, she started getting colder, and eventually told me she wanted to break off contact completely. I wasn't too surprised, since the friendship we had shifted enormously. Later, the woman I was dating told me my close friend had given her some snark behind my back, and that she did not deserve this at all. In conclusion, I can honestly say my close friend and I literally screwed up our friendship. I don't regret a thing in that regard. The woman I was dating is now my wife of almost 4 years, and we have a son together. The only thing I regret is the timing. Right in between the first and second date of my now life. She deserves more than that. Before people ask, my wife knows. I told her before we decided to move in with one another, since she deserved to know what she was getting into. I told her it was out of character for me to do such a thing, that I only regret the timing, but that in the past, I've made it a thing to only go on dates with one woman at a time. I felt it wasn't cheating, we weren't an item back then, but the timing made it questionable, and she needed to know before we got into a serious stage of living together. Story 6. I noticed a girl picking up on numerous drunk guys at a party, taking them to a back room for a few minutes each, then coming back out, all with the guy smiling. I was frisky and wanted in on that action, but was too shy to act on it. Didn't matter. She eventually set her sights on me, and I went. While I was in the midst of it, she was bragging that I was the 14th guy that night. Didn't matter to me at the time, but I felt disgusted afterwards. I should mention this was pre-AIDS time. I did get an STD though. I had to go to the free clinic for a shot the next week. Story 7. To get revenge on my ex cheating. She was her little in her sorority or something. She had a terrible personality, but was very hot. Similar thing happened to me, but it was to get revenge on a friend for stealing my ex. I was studying abroad for the summer, and while that was going on, he was hanging out almost every day with my then girlfriend. When I came back, they both sat me down to explain how they'd been spending a lot of time together and wanted to pursue things. It was less of a, we want your blessing, and more of a, this is what's going to happen, so you have to deal with it. Sure enough, a few weeks later, she broke up with him, and he called me to apologize, saying how he never should have done that to a friend, blah, blah, blah. I was still pretty damn hurt, and it broke my trust in him, but I was too exhausted to care anymore. Fast forward a few months, and he had started seeing a new girl. They were still in the early stages of dating, and nothing official, but he was really into her. So, of course, when I ran into her friend at a birthday party, I railed the crap out of her after some back and forth flirting. Younger me was both horny and vindictive. Story 8. Because I was temporarily homeless, and it meant I could have a shower and a comfortable bed for the night. I did not tell the man I was homeless. I had some pride, and I only did it a couple of times. We call this a hobosexual. Wouldn't the person with the bed be the hobosexual? Story 9. Because she asked. I was visiting a friend in a different part of the state, and she introduced me to one of her friends, and she gave me her AOL username. This was back in the late 90s. A few days after returning home, I received a message from the person asking for a one-night stand. A man has to comply with the AOL lady. It's just sound reasoning. Story 10. I was emotionally compromised and wanted to use a person that I cared nothing about to make me feel better about a situation that I couldn't fix. I appreciate your honesty. Honestly, 99% of people do this at one point in their life, whether they admit it or not. You admitting to it, even if it's anonymous, says a lot. Or maybe I'm just like you and want to feel better about myself, and I'm just a crazy rando. Therapy, here I come. Story 11. I went to her place to hook up one last time. She wasn't aware that it was my intention, but I left my watch behind, so I had to go back again and get my watch, and had to hook up again. You had to, huh? What do you think? Do you have any crazy hookup stories? If so, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my new uploads. This is Chino, signing off.